The desert sun hung like a molten coin in the afternoon sky as Lily Lawson clutched the eviction notice in her trembling hands. 3 months behind on rent for the small apothecary shop that doubled as her home, and now Mr. Grimes was threatening to sell her contract to cover the debt. In 1879, Sweetwater Springs, Arizona Territory, a woman alone had few options when money ran dry, and fewer friends willing to stand against the town's wealthiest businessman. "You've had your final warning, Miss Lawson," Grimes sneered, his mustache twitching with undisguised pleasure. He loomed in the doorway of her shop, blocking the light. "Tomorrow at noon, you'll be auctioned off to cover your debts. A 6-month labor contract ought to square things. Maybe more, depending on interest from the miners." Lily squared her shoulders, refusing to let him see how his words chilled her blood. At 23, she knew exactly what labor contract meant for a woman in these parts. "This is illegal, Mr. Grimes. I may be behind on rent, but you can't sell a person." "Ain't selling you, girl. Just your debt and the labor to pay it." His smile revealed tobacco-stained teeth. "Judge Parsons already signed the papers. Maybe next time you'll think twice before setting up shop with nothing but fancy Eastern schooling and pretty ideas." After he left, Lily sank to the floor amid her herbs and tinctures. The apothecary had been her dream, bringing medicine and healing to this dusty corner of the territory. Now it was crumbling around her, along with her freedom. "God help me," she whispered to the empty shop. Outside the window, a lone rider approached on the dusty main street, unaware he was riding into a story that would change everything. Heath Easton had been riding for 3 days straight, the dust of the trail embedded in every crease of his clothing. At 30, his face already showed the weathering of a man who lived by the elements' tan, lined at the corners of his blue eyes, but handsome in the rugged way of men who knew the wilderness. He'd come to Sweetwater Springs on business, tracking a herd of cattle that had been rustled from his employer's ranch near Tucson. The town looked like 100 others he'd passed through, false-fronted buildings baking in the sun, a saloon doing brisk business even in the afternoon heat, and a cluster of people gathered outside what looked like a general store, murmuring among themselves. Heath dismounted outside the saloon, tying his dun-colored gelding to the hitching post. He needed information, and saloons were always the best place to start. As he stepped onto the boardwalk, a piece of paper tacked to a post caught his eye. "Public notice debt auction tomorrow noon. Lawson apothecary contract starting bid, $300. Something about the notice made him pause. Debt auctions weren't uncommon in these parts, but something in the wording struck him as unusual. He'd seen equipment auctioned, buildings sold to cover debts, but a whole apothecary contract? Inside the saloon, the air hung heavy with smoke and whiskey fumes. Heath ordered a whiskey and slid it down the bar to where the bartender stood polishing glasses. "New in town?" the bartender asked, a heavy man with arms like tree trunks. "Just passing through. Looking for information about some missing cattle." Heath took a slow sip. "Couldn't help but notice that auction notice posted outside. What's the story there?" The bartender leaned forward. "The Lawson girl. Pretty little thing from back east. Set up an apothecary about a year ago. Been struggling to make ends meet. Grimes owns half the buildings in town, including hers. He's not a patient man when it comes to collecting what he's owed." "He's auctioning the business?" The bartender's expression darkened. "Not exactly. It's her labor he's selling. 6 months, maybe more. Whoever buys the contract gets her services until the debt is paid." Heath's hand tightened around his glass. "That sounds an awful lot like indentured servitude. Call it what you want. Grimes got Judge Parsons to sign off on it. Nobody's going to stop it. And the woman? Miss Lawson? Got nowhere to turn. No family out here. Folks respect her. She's helped plenty with her medicines, but nobody's got $300 to spare to help her out." Heath finished his drink in a single swallow. "Where's this apothecary?" "Down the street, past the general store, little place with herbs hanging in the window. The bartender studied him. Word of advice: Cowboy Grimes don't take kindly to people meddling in his business. Heath left a coin on the bar. Appreciate the warning. Outside, the heat hit him like a physical force, but it wasn't the sun that had his blood running hot. He'd seen too much injustice in his years on the frontier, and something about this situation struck a particular chord. He headed down the street toward the apothecary, unsure what he planned to do but knowing he couldn't simply ride away. The shop was modest but neat, with bundles of dried herbs hanging in the window and a hand-painted sign, Lawson's Apothecary and Medicinals. Through the window, he could see a young woman with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical knot, frantically packing items into crates. Heath hesitated, then knocked on the door frame. Lily startled, nearly dropping the bottle in her hands. A tall man stood in the doorway, trail dust still clinging to his clothes, his hat held respectfully in his hands. Something about his steady gaze made her breath catch. "We're closed," she said automatically, then winced at her own rudeness. "I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of something." "Miss Lawson?" His voice was deep, touched with a slight drawl. "Heath Easton. I wonder if I might have a word." Suspicion flared. "If Mr. Grimes sent you." "Nobody sent me, madam. I'm just passing through town and heard about your situation." Lily set down the bottle with a decisive click. "And you've come to what? Gawk at the spectacle? Or perhaps you're planning to bid tomorrow?" Bitterness sharpened her words. "Neither." He stepped inside but kept a respectful distance. "I wanted to understand exactly what's happening here. The bartender at the saloon mentioned something about a labor contract." The fight seemed to drain from her. "Mr. Grimes is auctioning my debt. I'm 3 months behind on rent for the shop. He claims he's within his legal rights to sell a labor contract to cover what I owe." She met his eyes directly. "It's barely legal, if at all. But the judge is his brother-in-law. How much do you owe?" $300 for the back rent, plus another 50 in fees he's invented." Her laugh was hollow. "Might as well be 3,000 for all the chance I have of raising it by noon tomorrow." Heath studied the shop. Neat shelves lined the walls, filled with labeled bottles and jars. A small counter displayed a mortar and pestle, scales, and reference books. This wasn't just a business. It was someone's life work. "You're a healer," he said, not a question. Lily nodded. "I trained with doctors back east. I came out here because people needed medical care. Most can't afford to pay much. I take trades, eggs, whatever they can manage." Pride straightened her spine. "I've saved lives in this town, Mr. Easton, but Grimes doesn't care about that. He only sees that I can't pay." Heath had seen too many small towns ruled by men like Grimes bullies who used money and influence to bend others to their will. He'd learned long ago that sometimes justice needed a helping hand. "What will you do?" he asked quietly. "I've been packing what I can carry." Her voice trembled slightly. "I thought I might try to leave tonight, but Grimes has men watching the shop. And even if I escaped, where would I go? This is my home now." Something settled in Heath's chest, a decision made before he'd even realized he was considering it. "There might be another way, Miss Lawson." She looked up, wariness and the faintest flicker of hope in her green eyes. "What way?" "I need to make some arrangements. Would you permit me to call on you in the morning, before the auction?" "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Heath placed his hat back on his head. "Let's just say I have a strong dislike for men who use power to prey on others." He paused at the door. "Lock up tonight, Miss Lawson. I'll return at first light." After he left, Lily stood frozen, uncertain whether to trust this stranger's vague promise or continue her desperate packing. Something about his calm confidence made her want to believe him, but experience had taught her that help rarely came without a price. Still, for the first time since Grimes had delivered his ultimatum, she felt a flutter of hope. Dawn broke over Sweetwater Springs, painting the buildings in golden rose. Lily had barely slept, alternating between packing her most precious possessions and pausing to wonder if the mysterious cowboy would actually return. She'd heard his type of promises before: men who offered help only to disappear or, worse, expect favors in return. A knock at the door made her jump. She smoothed her simple blue dress and opened it to find Heath Easton standing there, looking fresher than he had the previous day. He'd clearly bathed, shaved, and changed into clean clothes. "You came back?" she said, surprise evident in her voice. "I said I would." He removed his hat. "May I come in?" Lily stepped aside, noting the saddlebag slung over his shoulder. "Have you thought of a plan?" she asked, trying to keep the desperate hope from her voice. Heath set the saddlebags on her counter. "I have. But first, I need to understand exactly what legal claim Grimes has. Do you have any paperwork? The lease agreement? The eviction notice?" Lily retrieved the documents from her small desk in the corner. "Here. The lease states rent is due on the 1st of each month. I missed May, June, and now July." Heath examined the papers carefully. "This mentions nothing about labor contracts or auctions for unpaid rent." He looked up. "This is a standard lease. He has the right to evict you, but not to sell your labor." I told him that, but he said Judge Parsons signed special papers. "Likely an abuse of power, not actual law." Heath handed the lease back. "Miss Lawson, I believe I can help you, but I need to know you'll trust me to handle this, even if what I do seems strange at first." Lily studied him. In the morning light, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the small scar on his jaw, the steadiness of his gaze. He didn't look like a man who made empty promises. "I don't have many options, Mr. Easton. I'll trust you." He nodded and opened his saddlebags. "Then I need you to take this." He pulled out a heavy canvas pouch that clinked with the unmistakable sound of coins. "What's that?" $400. Enough to cover your debt and then some." Lily stepped back, shaking her head. "I can't accept that. It's too much. And I have no way to repay you." "I'm not asking for repayment." Heath placed the money on the counter. "Consider it an investment in justice." "Nobody just gives away $400, Mr. Easton." Suspicion crept back into her voice. "What do you want in return?" "Your trust for now. And perhaps your skill as a healer someday." He smiled slightly. "I work for the Circle D ranch south of Tucson. We could use someone with medical knowledge." "You're offering me a job?" "Eventually, perhaps. For now, I'm offering you a way out of this situation." He gestured to the money. "This stays here. You'll understand the rest when the time comes." Before she could question him further, the door opened. Grimes stood there, flanked by two men Lily recognized as his hired muscle. His gaze flicked between her and Heath, a nasty smile spreading across his face. "Well, well, entertaining gentlemen callers already, Miss Lawson? Practicing for your new position?" His eyes narrowed at Heath. "This don't concern you, stranger. Best move along." Heath didn't budge. "Actually, I believe it does concern me. I understand there's to be an auction today." Grimes stepped further into the shop. "Noon, Town Square. Though if you're interested, I might consider a private sale." He leered at Lily. "Save the lady the public embarrassment." Lily's face burned with humiliation and anger, but Heath remained calm. "I'll see you at noon, Mr. Grimes," he said evenly. After they left, Lily rounded on Heath. "What are you planning? He'll never accept the money. He wants to make an example of me." "I know men like Grimes. They care about two things: money and power." Heath headed for the door. "Meet me in the town square at noon. Wear something nice if you have it." "Mr. Easton." "Trust me, Miss Lawson." His eyes held hers. "This ends today." The noon sun beat down mercilessly on Sweetwater Springs as a crowd gathered in the town square. Lily stood at the edge, wearing her best dress, a forest green affair with modest lace at the collar that she'd brought from Boston and seldom had occasion to wear. Her stomach twisted with anxiety as she scanned the crowd for Heath. Grimes had set up a small platform where he now stood with Judge Parsons, looking smug and self-important as he addressed the gathering. "Folks of Sweetwater Springs, we're here today to resolve a matter of business." Grimes gestured toward Lily. "Miss Lawson here has failed to meet her financial obligations. The law permits me to recoup my losses through the sale of a labor contract." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lily noticed several people looking uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. "The contract is for 6 months of labor," Grimes continued. "Starting bid is $300. Do I hear 300? Silence fell over the square. Lily felt her cheeks burning with shame as every eye turned to her. Then a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. "I have a question before the bidding starts." The crowd parted as Heath walked forward, cutting an imposing figure in his clean shirt and vest, his gun belt visible beneath his long coat. Grimes frowned. "This ain't a debate, mister. It's an auction." "I'm just seeking clarification," Heath said, his voice carrying across the square. "This contract is to cover Miss Lawson's debt of $300, correct?" "Plus 50 in fees," Grimes said. "That's the starting bid." Heath nodded thoughtfully. "And once that amount is paid, Miss Lawson owes nothing further?" "That's right." Grimes was growing visibly irritated. "Now, do you have a bid or not?" Heath reached into his coat and pulled out a leather wallet. The crowd watched in stunned silence as he counted out bills and gold coins. $350, he said, stepping forward and placing the money on the platform at Grimes's feet. "She owes nothing now." Grimes stared at the money, then at Heath. "That ain't how this works. This is an auction for a labor contract." "No, Mr. Grimes, this is about a debt." Heath's voice hardened. "The debt is now paid in full." Judge Parsons leaned forward, eyeing the money. "He's right, Gerald. If the debt is paid, there's no basis for a labor contract." "This is my auction," Grimes sputtered, his face reddening. "I decide how it works." "Actually," Heath said calmly, "the law decides. Isn't that right, Judge?" Whispers raced through the crowd as people realized what was happening. Lily stood frozen, hardly daring to breathe. The judge, perhaps seeing the mood of the townspeople shifting, cleared his throat. "The stranger is correct. If the debt is satisfied, Miss Lawson is under no further obligation." He looked uncomfortable, but continued. "I declare this matter resolved." "No." Grimes lunged for the money, but Heath was faster, placing his hand firmly on the stack of bills. "This goes to you only when you sign a receipt acknowledging the debt is paid in full." Heath pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I've taken the liberty of preparing one." Grimes looked like he might explode, his eyes darting between Heath, the judge, and the increasingly interested crowd. Finally, with a growl of frustration, he snatched the paper and scribbled his signature. "This ain't over," he hissed as Heath collected the receipt and handed over the money. "Yes, Mr. Grimes, it is." Heath turned to the crowd. "You all witnessed this transaction. Miss Lawson's debt is paid. She owes nothing further." A cheer went up from several onlookers, people Lily recognized as those she'd treated when they couldn't afford the doctor. Grimes stormed off the platform, pushing his way through the dispersing crowd. Lily approached Heath, her legs shaky with relief and disbelief. "You did it," she whispered. "How can I ever thank you?" Heath handed her the signed receipt. "Keep this safe, and perhaps we should continue our conversation somewhere less public." Back at the apothecary, Lily moved in a daze, offering Heath a seat and pouring them both cups of tea with trembling hands. "I still don't understand," she said, sitting across from him. "Why would you do this for a stranger? That was your own money, wasn't it? Not from your employer?" Heath nodded. "My own. I've been saving for a piece of land someday, This seemed a more pressing use for it. But why? Lily pressed. No one does something like this without a reason. Heath was quiet for a moment, turning the teacup in his hands. My sister, he finally said. She was in a similar situation 5 years ago in Colorado. No one helped her. His eyes, when they met Lily's, held old pain. She didn't survive what happened after. I'm so sorry, Lily whispered. I couldn't help her then. But I can help now. Heath set down his cup. Miss Lawson, I meant what I said about the Circle D needing someone with medical knowledge. It's a 3-day ride from here, but it's good country. Safe country. Lily looked around at her small shop. This is my home. My dream. Is it still? Can you stay here with Grimes waiting for another opportunity? He seems like a man who holds grudges. She knew he was right. Grimes would never forgive this public humiliation. He'd find another way to come after her. What exactly are you offering, Mr. Easton? A fresh start. The ranch has a small cabin that's been vacant since our previous doctor moved on. You'd have your own place, and people who need your skills. He paused. I'm not asking for anything in return, Miss Lawson. This isn't about that. Lily studied him, this stranger who'd upended her life twice in 24 hours. When would we leave? Tomorrow at dawn, if you're willing. It's best not to give Grimes time to plot something else. The decision should have been difficult, but somehow it wasn't. In the space of a day, Sweetwater Springs had gone from her home to a place she no longer felt safe. And this man, this cowboy who'd appeared like something out of a dime novel, had offered her not just rescue, but respect. I'll be ready, she said. They left before sunrise, Lily's possessions packed into crates secured to a mule Heath had purchased the previous evening. She'd spent the night sorting through her life, keeping only what was essential: her medical books, herbs and medicines, clothing, and a few treasured mementos from her family back east. The journey to the Circle D would take 3 days if they pushed hard. Heath set a steady pace, careful not to exhaust Lily, who wasn't accustomed to long days in the saddle. They made camp the first night in a small canyon, sheltered from the wind by high rock walls. As Heath built a fire, Lily arranged her bedroll on the opposite side of the flames, maintaining a proper distance. Despite his kindness, he was still largely a stranger, and she wasn't naive about the dangers a woman faced alone with a man in the wilderness. But as they shared a simple meal of beans and jerky, she found herself relaxing in his quiet company. How long have you worked for the Circle D? She asked, breaking the comfortable silence. 5 years. Started as a regular hand, worked my way up to foreman last year. There was pride in his voice. Mr. Daniels, that's the owner, is a good man. Fair. Treats his people well. And he won't mind you bringing a strange woman to his ranch? Heath smiled slightly. Mrs. Daniels has been after him to find a new doctor since old Doc Fletcher moved back east. Your arrival will likely earn me a raise, not a scolding. Lily wrapped her hands around her tin cup of coffee. I keep thinking about how differently yesterday could have ended. She looked up at him. I never properly thanked you. No need. There is. What you did? Her voice caught. You saved more than just my business, Mr. Easton. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Get some rest, Miss Lawson. We've got a long ride tomorrow. As she settled into her bedroll, watching the stars appear one by one above the canyon walls, Lily realized she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time: safety. Not just physical security, but the deeper comfort of knowing someone cared what happened to her. The thought followed her into sleep, along with the image of steady blue eyes watching over her across the dancing flames. The next 2 days of travel settled into a rhythm. They rode through rolling grasslands and rocky passes, Heath pointing out landmarks and sharing stories of the territory. Lily found herself laughing at his dry humor and impressed by his knowledge of the land and its plants. That's sagebrush, he said, indicating a scrubby plant with silvery leaves. Locals use it for fever. They're right to, Lily replied. It's excellent for reducing temperature when brewed as a tea. I'm impressed you know that. Heath shrugged. You pick things up. Living out here. My mother was part Cherokee. She taught me a bit about plants before she passed. By the third day, Lily's muscles ached from the unaccustomed riding, but she didn't complain. The land was opening up around them, revealing vistas of surprising beauty, distant mountains, valleys carpeted in wildflowers, streams that cut through the dry landscape like silver ribbons. We're on Circle D land now, Heath announced in the late afternoon. Have been for the last hour or so. It's enormous, Lily said, amazed. 20,000 acres, one of the biggest spreads in the territory. As the sun began its descent, they crested a rise and Lily caught her breath. Below them stretched a green valley, dotted with cattle and bisected by a wide creek. At its center stood a collection of buildings, a large main house, bunkhouses, barns, corrals, and scattered smaller cabins. Welcome to the Circle D, Heath said, a note of pride in his voice. They rode down into the valley, dust rising behind them as they approached the main compound. Men paused in their work to watch them pass, raising hands in greeting to Heath and eyeing Lily with undisguised curiosity. A tall, gray-haired man emerged from the main house as they dismounted in front of it. His weathered face broke into a smile at the sight of Heath. Easton! Didn't expect you back so soon. Any luck with those rustlers? Got a lead, Mr. Daniels. They're moving the herd north, likely toward Colorado. Heath removed his hat. Sir, I'd like to introduce Miss Lily Lawson. She's a trained medical practitioner from the East. Daniels turned his attention to Lily, his shrewd eyes taking her measure. That so? Well, Miss Lawson, you're a sight for sore eyes. We've been without proper medical help since Doc Fletcher left. A woman appeared in the doorway behind him, handsome, with silver-streaked dark hair and a commanding presence. Daniel? Who's this? Martha, come meet Miss Lawson. Easton's brought us a doctor. Martha Daniels hurried forward, genuine delight on her face. A doctor? A lady doctor? Oh, thank heavens. Lily smiled, relieved at the warm welcome. I'm not formally a physician, Mrs. Daniels. I trained with doctors back east and practiced herbal medicine. I ran an apothecary until recently. Can you set bones, stitch wounds, and deliver babies? Martha asked practically. Yes, madam. All of that and more. Then you're a doctor in my book. Martha linked her arm through Lily's. Come inside. You must be exhausted from the journey. Heath, see to Miss Lawson's things. We've kept Doc Fletcher's cabin ready. She can move in tomorrow after she's rested. Lily glanced back at Heath as Mrs. Daniels led her away. He gave her a reassuring nod, and something in his steady gaze made her heart beat just a little faster. That evening, after a hearty dinner with the Daniels family, Lily found herself sitting on the front porch of the main house, enjoying the cool night air. The vastness of the sky above the ranch took her breath away, countless stars scattered across the darkness like diamond dust. The sound of boots on the porch steps made her turn. Heath approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He offered one to her and settled into the chair beside her. How are you finding the Circle D so far? He asked. Everyone's been very kind. Mrs. Daniels showed me the cabin I'll be using. It's perfect. Much larger than my room above the apothecary. Lily took a sip of coffee. I already have 3 patients to see tomorrow. Word travels fast. People have been making do with home remedies, and the nearest doctor is in Tucson, a full day's ride. Heath leaned back in his chair. You'll be busy here. Thank you, she said suddenly. For bringing me here. For everything. You don't need to keep thanking me, Miss Lawson. Lily, she said. Please call me Lily. After everything we've been through, Miss Lawson seems overly formal. His smile was visible even in the dim light from the windows. Lily, then. And I'm Heath. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking their coffee and watching the stars. "What will you do now?" Lily finally asked. "About the rustlers, I mean." "Head out again in a few days. I've got some men to recruit in Tucson first." He turned to look at her. "Will you be all right here while I'm gone?" The concern in his voice warmed her. "I think so. The Daniels seem like good people. And I'll be busy with patients." "They are good people. You'll be safe here." He paused. "When I return, perhaps we could continue our conversations? I've enjoyed getting to know you these past few days." Lily felt a blush rise to her cheeks, glad for the darkness that hid it. "I'd like that very much." The following weeks passed in a blur of activity for Lily. She settled into Doc Fletcher's old cabin, a snug two-room structure near the creek, and quickly transformed it into both a home and a clinic. Word of her arrival spread rapidly through the surrounding ranches, and soon she was treating everything from minor injuries to chronic ailments. The work was rewarding in a way her struggling apothecary had never been. Here, she had resources. The Daniels were generous with supplies and patients who genuinely appreciated her skills. Martha Daniels became a fast friend, helping Lily navigate the social dynamics of ranch life and introducing her to other women in the area. Heath had left 3 days after their arrival, riding out with 4 other men to track the cattle rustlers. His absence left a strange hollowness that Lily wasn't entirely ready to examine. They'd known each other barely a week, yet somehow he had become significant to her in ways she couldn't quite define. 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. Lily tried not to worry, telling herself that tracking criminals through the territory would naturally take time. Still, each day she found herself watching the horizon, hoping to see riders returning. It was nearly 5 weeks after his departure when Heath finally rode back to the Circle D. Lily was treating a ranch hand's broken finger when she heard the commotion outside. She finished splinting the injury and stepped onto her porch, just as Heath dismounted in front of the main house. Even from a distance she could see he was thinner, his clothes dusty and worn from the trail. But he moved with the same quiet confidence, speaking to Mr. Daniels as the other men led their horses toward the barn. Lily retreated inside, suddenly unsure. Their parting had held a promise of something more, but weeks had passed. Perhaps his interest had been mere politeness, a kindness to a woman he'd helped. That evening, as she prepared a simple supper in her cabin, a knock sounded at her door. Heath stood there, freshly bathed and shaved, holding his hat in his hands. "Good evening, Lily," he said, her name sounding different somehow in his voice. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Heath! No, not at all. Please, come in." She stepped aside, aware of her quickened pulse. "I heard you returned. Was your mission successful?" "Mostly." He entered, glancing around appreciatively at what she'd done with the cabin. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling beams, medical books lined the shelves, and cheerful curtains framed the windows. "We recovered most of the cattle and captured 2 of the rustlers. The others escaped into the mountains." "You were gone a long time." "Longer than I expected." He met her eyes. "I thought about you often." The simple statement hung in the air between them, filled with meaning. Lily busied herself with the kettle, trying to hide the flush in her cheeks. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "I was just making supper. Nothing fancy, but there's plenty." "I'd be grateful. Ranch food tastes mighty good after weeks of trail rations." They shared a meal of rabbit stew and cornbread, catching up on the events of the past month. Lily told him about her patients and the friendships she'd begun to form. Heath described the challenging pursuit through rough country. The conversation flowed easily, as if they'd known each other for years rather than weeks. After they'd eaten, Heath helped her clear the table, their hands brushing occasionally in a way that sent tiny shivers through her. "Lily," he said finally, his voice serious, "there's something I've been wanting to say to you." She looked up at him, her heart suddenly racing. Yes? When I first saw you in Sweetwater Springs, I acted on instinct. I wanted to help because it was the right thing to do. He took a step closer. But during our journey here, something changed. I came to admire your courage, your intelligence, your kindness. Lily hardly dared breathe. Heath, please, let me finish. His eyes never left hers. These weeks away, I've had a lot of time to think. About you. About us. I know it hasn't been long, but I feel something for you that I've never felt before. I'm not asking for anything now, just the chance to court you properly. To see if what I feel might be something you could share. The directness of his words left her momentarily speechless. In Boston, men had couched such sentiments in flowery language and formal proposals. Heath's straightforward honesty was both refreshing and disarming. I've thought about you too, she admitted, more than I probably should, given how briefly we've known each other. Hope lit his eyes. Then you might consider yes. The word came easily, naturally. I would very much like to be courted by you, Heath Easton. His smile transformed his face, easing the lines that weeks on the trail had deepened. I'll do it right, Lily. Call on you properly. Take you on actual outings, not just desperate flights across the territory. She laughed. Our first meeting was rather unconventional, wasn't it? I wouldn't change it, he said softly. Not a single moment. When he left her cabin that night, Heath didn't kiss her, though they both felt the possibility hovering between them. Instead, he took her hand and pressed it gently to his lips, a gesture both respectful and filled with promise. As summer turned to autumn, Heath courted Lily with a thoroughness that charmed her. He called on her regularly, bringing small gifts, a book of poetry he'd found in Tucson, wildflowers gathered during his rides, a beautiful shawl when the evenings grew cooler. They rode together on her days off, exploring the vast beauty of the Circle D, picnicking by streams and talking for hours. The ranch community watched their courtship with approving eyes. Lily had proven herself invaluable, treating everything from minor injuries to a difficult childbirth at a neighboring ranch. Heath's position as foreman already commanded respect, and together they made a pair that people naturally looked to. As October painted the cottonwoods along the creek gold and crimson, Heath invited Lily to ride to a special place he wanted to show her. They set out early, the morning air crisp with the promise of winter still months away. "Where are you taking me?" Lily asked as they rode farther than they had before, into a section of the ranch she hadn't yet seen. "Patience," Heath replied with a smile. "We're almost there." They rounded a bend in the trail and emerged onto a high meadow overlooking the valley. The view was spectacular, the ranch buildings tiny in the distance, cattle grazing in the lush pastures, and beyond, the mountains rising blue and majestic against the sky. "Oh, Heath," Lily breathed, "it's beautiful." They dismounted, and Heath spread a blanket on the grass. From his saddlebags he produced a lunch that Martha Daniels had helped prepare: fried chicken, biscuits, apple pie, and a bottle of wine that Mr. Daniels had contributed with a knowing wink. As they ate, Heath seemed unusually quiet, almost nervous, a state Lily had rarely seen him in. When they'd finished, he stood and offered his hand to help her up. "There's something else I want to show you," he said. He led her to the far side of the meadow where the land dipped slightly before rising again. There, nestled in the protected hollow, stood the frame of a small house. The foundation was complete, the support beams in place, though the walls were only partially built. "What is this?" Lily asked, confusion giving way to a dawning realization. "My land." Heath's voice was soft with pride. "Mr. Daniels sold me 200 acres last spring. I've been building whenever I can spare the time." He turned to face her. "It's not much yet, but by spring, it could be a proper home." Lily walked around the structure, running her hand along the rough-hewn beams. You're building this yourself? With some help from the boys on Sundays? It's slow going between my duties at the ranch, but... He took a deep breath. Lily, I brought you here because I wanted you to see it. To see what I hope could be our future. Her heart seemed to stop, then race ahead. Our future? Heath took her hands in his. I know it's only been a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Lily. Your strength, your compassion, your determination. The way you care for others without hesitation. The way you've made a place for yourself here through your own merit. Tears filled Lily's eyes as he continued. I'm not a wealthy man. I can't offer you the comforts you might have had back east. But I can promise you this. A home built with my own hands, land that will be ours to shape as we choose, and my heart, completely and forever yours. He dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Lily Lawson, will you marry me? The question hung in the air between them, filled with hope and possibility. Lily looked at the man before her, the man who had saved her from humiliation and, possible worse, who had given her a fresh start asking nothing in return, who had courted her with respect and genuine affection. The man she had, somewhere along the way, fallen deeply in love with. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, Heath Easton. I will marry you. Joy broke across his face like sunrise. He stood and pulled her into his arms, and finally, after months of restraint, their lips met in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. They were married 2 weeks later in the Daniels' front parlor with the entire ranch gathered to celebrate. Martha had insisted on making Lily's dress a simple but elegant creation of ivory satin with lace at the collar and cuffs. Mr. Daniels gave the bride away, and the ranch cook outdid himself with a feast that people would talk about for years. As husband and wife, they moved temporarily into Lily's cabin while Heath continued work on their house. The winter months slowed construction, but they used the time to plan ordering furnishings from catalogs, planting the seeds of what their life together would be. Lily continued her medical practice, now with Heath's full support and assistance. Together they designed a proper clinic to be added to their new home, with Heath building special shelves for her medicines and books. Spring came early that year, bringing with it renewed energy for building. By May, their house was complete, a comfortable 6-room structure with wide porches and large windows that caught the light. The day they moved in, Heath carried Lily across the threshold, both of them laughing with the sheer joy of beginning this chapter of their lives. As summer approached again, Lily stood on their porch one evening, watching Heath lead his horse to the barn after a long day overseeing the spring cattle drive. A year had passed since that fateful day in Sweetwater Springs when a stranger had stepped forward to save her from public humiliation. Now that stranger was her husband, and the life she'd nearly lost had been replaced by one richer than she could have imagined. Heath joined her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands coming to rest protectively over her slightly rounded belly, their first child, due in the winter. Happy? He murmured against her hair. Lily leaned back against him, feeling the solid strength that had become her foundation. Completely. They stood together as twilight deepened, watching the stars appear one by one over their land, their home, their future. From desperation to contentment, from debt to abundance, from strangers to beloved partners, their journey had only just begun. But already it was more beautiful than either could have dreamed. 10 years passed, transforming both the land and the people who called it home. The Circle D thrived under Daniel Daniels's leadership, with Heath eventually becoming his right-hand man and unofficial successor as the older man began to slow down. Their own property, which they'd named Easton Springs for the natural spring they'd discovered on their land, had grown from a simple homestead to a prosperous small ranch of their own. The house that Heath had built with such care now boasted additional rooms to accommodate their growing family. James, their firstborn, was 9, a serious boy, with his father's blue eyes and his mother's thoughtful nature. Emma, 7, was all energy and curiosity, constantly trailing after her father to learn about horses and cattle. The youngest, 4-year-old Thomas, was still primarily his mother's shadow, helping with her herbs and watching with solemn attention as she treated patients. Lily's medical practice had expanded beyond the Circle D to serve the growing community. As the territory developed, more families settled in the area, drawn by the good grazing land and the increasingly stable conditions. Word of a skilled healer spread, bringing people from considerable distances to seek her help. Heath had insisted on building her a proper clinic adjacent to their home, a light-filled room with an examination table he'd crafted himself, shelves for her medicines and equipment, and a small waiting area where patients could sit comfortably. It was here that Lily spent much of her time when not tending to their children or the household. On a warm September afternoon, as Lily organized her supplies after treating a ranch hand's dislocated shoulder, she heard the familiar sound of hoofbeats approaching. Through the window, she watched Heath dismount, their children running to greet him as they always did. James took the reins of his father's horse, proudly leading the animal to the barn, a responsibility he'd recently been granted. Emma danced around Heath, clearly bursting with news of her day, while little Thomas raised his arms to be lifted high in his father's strong embrace. The sight never failed to fill Lily with profound gratitude. From that desperate day in Sweetwater Springs to this moment of domestic happiness, the journey sometimes seemed miraculous. Heath entered the clinic, setting Thomas down to explore the familiar space under Lily's watchful eye. "How was your day?" he asked, bending to kiss her cheek. "Busy. Mrs. Thornton's baby has colic, the Peterson twins both have chickenpox, and Danny from the South pasture dislocated his shoulder trying to break that new Mustang." She smiled. "Nothing serious, thankfully. How was yours?" "Productive. We moved the herd to the North pasture." He hesitated slightly. "And I received a letter from Tucson. They delivered it to the main house." Something in his tone caught her attention. "What kind of letter?" Heath pulled an envelope from his pocket. "From a lawyer. Gerald Grimes died last month." The name hit Lily like a physical blow. In the happiness of her new life, she'd managed to think of Sweetwater Springs less and less over the years, the traumatic memories fading into the background. Now they rushed back the humiliation of the auction block, the fear, the helplessness. She took the letter with unsteady hands. "What does this have to do with us?" Apparently, he had no heirs. His property is being liquidated to pay his debts. Heath's expression was carefully neutral. "The lawyer is handling the estate and found your name among his papers. There's a note about the apothecary shop. Seems Grimes never rented it after you left. It's been sitting empty all these years." Lily skimmed the official language of the letter. "They're offering to sell it to me at a reduced price, as the previous tenant." She looked up at Heath, bewildered. "Why would I want it?" "You wouldn't." Heath took her hands in his. "But I thought you should know. That chapter of your life is truly closed now." Lily let the letter drop to the table. A strange mixture of emotions washing through her. Relief, certainly. Perhaps a touch of vindication. But mostly an overwhelming awareness of how far she had come from that desperate young woman with nowhere to turn. "I never told you," she said softly. "But in my darkest moments in Sweetwater Springs, I used to dream of someday having enough money to buy that building outright. To never be at the mercy of a landlord again." She smiled, looking around at the clinic Heath had built for her, thinking of their beautiful home just steps away. "I got something so much better." Heath pulled her gently into his arms. "We both did." That evening, after the children were tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Lily and Heath sat on their porch swing, a habit they'd maintained through 10 years of marriage. The night was clear. Stars scattered across the vast Arizona sky, the air fragrant with late summer blooms. "I've been thinking," Heath said, his arm around her shoulders, "about that letter." Lily leaned against him. "What about it?" "Not about Grimes or the shop exactly. More about what it represents." He turned slightly to look at her. "Lily, we've built something wonderful here. Our home, our family, your practice. But there's something I've been considering for a while now." "That sounds serious," she said, a note of teasing in her voice. "Maybe it is." He took her hand, a gesture that still sent a flutter through her after all these years. "The territory's changing. More people settling. Towns growing. There's talk of statehood in the next few years." "I've heard the rumors." "What would you think about expanding your practice? Building a proper hospital for the region?" Lily straightened, surprised. "A hospital? Here?" "Not exactly here in the new town they're planning where Coopersville and Jamestown are growing together. It's less than an hour's ride from our land." His eyes were alight with the idea. "You've already trained Martha's daughter as your assistant. There are 2 doctors in Tucson who've mentioned wanting to practice somewhere less crowded. The foundation is there." The concept took Lily's breath away. "That would require significant investment." "Which we could manage, between what we've saved and what the Daniels would likely contribute." Daniel's been talking about legacy lately, something that would serve the community for generations. Heath squeezed her hand. "Just think about it. A place where you could treat more people, train others in your methods, perhaps even bring in some of those medical advances you read about in your journals." Lily's mind raced with possibilities. For years, she'd done her best with limited resources, often wishing for better equipment or more hands to help. A proper hospital could save so many lives, improve countless others. "You've put a lot of thought into this," she said. Heath nodded. "I want you to have the chance to do everything you're capable of, Lily. I've watched you these 10 years, seen how much good you do. Imagine how much more would be possible." Tears pricked at her eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming love for this man who had never once tried to diminish her dreams or confine her to conventional roles. From the moment he'd stepped forward in that dusty town square, he had been lifting her up, making space for her to become more fully herself. "Heath Easton," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "do you have any idea how much I love you?" His smile was tender in the moonlight. "I think I might. It's about equal to how much I love you." Lily kissed him then, pouring a decade of gratitude and partnership and passion into the gesture. When they parted, both a little breathless, she rested her forehead against his. "Let's do it," she whispered. "Let's build a hospital." In the years that followed, the Easton's vision took shape. The Daniels contributed generously to what became known as Frontier Medical Center, the first proper hospital in that part of the Arizona territory. Lily served as its director, while Heath managed their growing ranch and helped oversee the Circle D as Daniel Daniels gradually retired. Their children grew tall and strong, each finding their own path. James followed in his father's footsteps, showing a natural aptitude for ranching and business. Emma, to no one's surprise, pursued medicine, studying first under her mother and later traveling east to formal training, one of the first women admitted to medical school from the territory. Thomas developed an unexpected talent for architecture, eventually designing an expanded wing for the hospital his parents had founded. On the 20th anniversary of the day they met, Heath surprised Lily with a journey not back to Sweetwater Springs, which held too many difficult memories, but to San Francisco, a trip they'd often talked about but never found time to take. For 2 weeks, they explored the vibrant city, attended the opera, walked along the bay, and remembered what it was to be simply husband and wife, not doctor and rancher, not parents and community leaders. On their last evening, dining in the elegant restaurant of their hotel, Heath raised his glass in a toast. "To the luckiest day of my life," he said. "The day I happened to ride into a dusty little town and found the woman who would change everything." Lily touched her glass to his. "To the man who said she owes nothing now and gave me everything." As they sipped their champagne, their eyes held across the table, older now, lined with the evidence of smiles and worries and years in the sun, but still filled with the same connection that had sparked between them 2 decades before. "Would you do it all again?" Heath asked softly. "If you could go back to that day, knowing everything that would come?" Lily didn't hesitate. Every moment, the fear and uncertainty then was worth the joy that followed. She reached across the table to take his hand. "What about you? Would you still pay a stranger's debt, not knowing if you'd ever see that money again?" Heath's fingers tightened around hers. "For the life we've built? For our children? Our home? These years together?" His smile held all the love of their shared decades. "Lily, my love, it was the best investment I ever made." In the soft light of the restaurant, surrounded by the murmur of conversation and the gentle clink of silverware, they gazed at each other, no longer the desperate shopkeeper and the honorable cowboy, but partners who had faced life's challenges side by side, who had built something enduring from an unlikely beginning. Outside, the city hummed with activity, and back home, the future waited with new challenges and joys. But in this moment there was only gratitude for a chance encounter in a small town square, where a man with principles had stepped forward, paid a debt, and changed 2 lives forever.